Another crash diet, Emma? My sister Victoria's voice dripped with disdain as she looked me up and down at our weekly family dinner. You've always been desperate for attention, but this is getting ridiculous. I pushed the food around on my plate, trying to ignore the waves of nausea that had become my constant companion. At 34, I'd lost 20 pounds in 2 months without trying. My clothes hung loose, my face looked gaunt, and the constant fatigue made every day feel like running a marathon. I'm just not feeling well, I said quietly, avoiding the judgmental stares from around the table. My mother sighed, exchanging knowing looks with Victoria. Honey, if you're having eating issues again, we can find you help, Mom said, her voice dripping with fake concern. Remember when you were 16? Ah yes, 16, when Victoria had spread rumors at school about me having an eating disorder because I lost weight during swim team training. It didn't matter that I'd won state championships that year. In my family's eyes, everything I did was just another bid for attention. I'm not dieting, I insisted, pushing away another wave of nausea. I've actually been trying to gain weight. Victoria snorted, nearly choking on her wine. Right. That's why you're barely touching Mom's lasagna. You know it's her specialty. Leave your sister alone, Dad muttered, though his tone suggested he was more interested in avoiding conflict than defending me. I'm just concerned, Victoria said, her voice syrupy sweet. First the migraines that made you miss my engagement party, now this dramatic weight loss right before my wedding. It's like you can't stand anyone else being in the spotlight. I gripped my fork tighter, remembering the blinding pain that had kept me in bed during her engagement celebration. Like everything else, my family had dismissed it as another plea for attention. The doctor is running some tests, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. I have an appointment next week to get the results. Oh, so now we're playing the mysterious illness card? Victoria rolled her eyes. What's next, Emma? A wheelchair at my wedding? The table fell silent. Even Mom looked uncomfortable with that comment. Victoria, Dad warned, but she was on a roll. No, I'm tired of this. Every time something good happens to me, Emma has to make it about her. Remember my college graduation? She had that convenient panic attack right in the middle of the ceremony. My chest tightened at the memory. The dizziness, the crushing chest pain that sent me to the ER. The doctors had called it a panic attack, and my family never let me forget it. That's enough, Ted said firmly, but the damage was done. I stood up, my chair scraping against the floor. I need some air. And now the dramatic exit, Victoria commented as I walked away. Always on brand, sis. Outside, the cool evening air did little to settle my churning stomach. I leaned against the porch railing, trying to steady myself as black spots danced in my vision. My phone buzzed in my pocket, a reminder about tomorrow's oncology appointment. I hadn't told them about the appointment, about the lumps I'd found, the night sweats, the bone-deep fatigue that no amount of sleep could cure. What was the point? They probably accused me of Googling cancer symptoms for attention. The door opened behind me. Mom stepped out, her face pinched with worry. Emma, honey, we're just concerned about you. These patterns of behavior. They're not patterns, Mom, I interrupted, suddenly too tired to maintain the peace. I'm actually sick. Of course you are, she patted my arm condescendingly. Just like you were sick before Victoria's high school graduation and her engagement party and, I have an oncology appointment tomorrow, I cut her off, watching her face freeze. The GP found some concerning symptoms. They're testing for lymphoma. Mom's hand dropped from my arm. Cancer? Don't you think that's taking things a bit far? The laugh that escaped me was hollow. Of course. Even the possibility of cancer was just another attention-seeking ploy in their eyes. You know what? Never mind. I'll let you know what the doctor says. I grabbed my purse from inside and headed for my car, ignoring Victoria's calls about running away again. As I drove home, my phone kept buzzing with texts from Victoria. Real classy, dropping the C word to ruin my pre-wedding dinner. Mom's upset now. Hope you're happy. You always have to one-up me, don't you? I turned my phone off, focusing on the road through tears. Tomorrow's appointment loomed in my mind. The test results that would either validate my concerns or give my family more ammunition for their narrative about my attention-seeking ways. Little did they know, this time would be different. This time, the truth would silence them all. The oncology department was eerily quiet as I sat alone in the waiting room. Victoria's text from this morning still burned in my mind. Mom's beside herself, thinking you actually believe you have cancer. This is a new low, even for you. If you show up at my wedding looking for sympathy, I swear. I turned my phone off just as Dr. Matthews called my name. She was a stern-looking woman in her 50s, with kind eyes that made my stomach clench with anxiety. The way she closed her office door carefully behind us told me everything I needed to know. "Please take a seat, Emma," she said, pulling out a thick file. My test results. My hands started trembling. "Stage 3 Hodgkin's lymphoma," she said quietly, placing a scan in front of me. "The PET scan shows significant spread to your lymph nodes and spleen. This explains the weight loss, night sweats, and fatigue you've been experiencing." The words hit me like physical blows. Even though I'd suspected, had felt in my bones that something was seriously wrong, hearing it confirmed made the room spin. "We need to start treatment immediately," Dr. Matthews continued, her voice seeming to come from far away. "I'm recommending an aggressive chemotherapy protocol." I barely heard the rest. All I could think about was Victoria's mocking voice. Another diet for attention? "Emma." Dr. Matthews touched my arm gently. "I know this is overwhelming. Do you have someone here with you?" I shook my head, fighting back tears. "My family. They thought I was making it up. For attention." Her face softened with understanding. "Would you like me to call them?" Sometimes hearing it from a medical professional. "Yes," I whispered. "Please." She picked up her office phone, and I gave her my mother's number with shaking hands. It rang 3 times before Mom answered. "Mrs. Anderson? This is Dr. Matthews from Metropolitan Oncology. I'm here with your daughter, Emma." I could hear Mom's sharp intake of breath through the phone. "Oh God, she actually went to an oncologist?" "Doctor, I'm so sorry she's wasting your time. Emma has a history off." "Mrs. Anderson," Dr. Matthews cut her off firmly. "I'm calling to inform you that we've diagnosed Emma with stage 3 Hodgkin's lymphoma. We need to begin treatment immediately, given the aggressive nature of her condition." Silence. Complete silence on the other end. "Mrs. Anderson?" There must be some mistake. Mom's voice was barely audible. "She's been doing this for attention since she was a teenager." Dr. Matthews's expression hardened. "Ma'am, I'm looking at Emma's PET scan right now. This is not a bid for attention. Your daughter is seriously ill and needs her family's support. I strongly recommend you come to the hospital as soon as possible." More silence, then muffled sobbing. We'll be right there." After hanging up, Dr. Matthews squeezed my hand. "They're on their way. Would you like to see the social worker while we wait? We have excellent support services for patients and families." I nodded numbly, still processing everything. Within an hour, my quiet hospital room became a storm center. Mom arrived first, her makeup streaked with tears, followed by Dad, who looked like he'd aged 10 years. Victoria burst in last. Still in her wedding planner meeting clothes, her face white as chalk. "The doctor's wrong," she announced, but her voice shook. "They must have mixed up your results with someone else's." Dr. Matthews, who had returned with my treatment plan, shook her head. "I assure you there's no mistake. Would you like to see the scans?" She pulled out the images, pointing out the masses that had been growing inside me while my family accused me of attention-seeking. Victoria sank into a chair, her hand over her mouth. "All those times," Mom whispered, "when you said you weren't feeling well. The engagement party," Victoria's voice cracked. "You weren't faking the migraines." "No," I said quietly, "I wasn't." The room fell silent except for Mom's quiet sobs. Dr. Matthews began explaining the treatment protocol, but I was watching Victoria, my sister, who had spent years dismissing every illness, every pain, every struggle I'd had as a cry for attention, was staring at the scan with horror dawning on her face. "Treatment needs to begin immediately," Dr. Matthews was saying. "The first chemotherapy session is scheduled for tomorrow morning." "But my wedding," Victoria whispered. "It's in 3 weeks." For the first time that day, anger flared in my chest. "I'm sorry my cancer is inconveniencing your wedding plans, Victoria." She flinched as if I'd slapped her. Dad put his head in his hands, and Mom started crying harder. "That's not. I didn't mean." Victoria stumbled over her words, then rushed out of the room. The next few weeks passed in a blur of needles, nausea, and devastating realizations. Each chemotherapy session stripped away more than just my hair. It stripped away the facade my family had built around our relationships. Victoria postponed her wedding. She announced it through a group text, not even mentioning my diagnosis. "Due to unforeseen family circumstances, Brian and I have decided to reschedule." The responses flooded in immediately. What happened? Is everything okay? Did you and Brian have a fight? My sister, who had spent years accusing me of seeking attention, couldn't bring herself to tell people the truth, that her dramatic sister actually had cancer. Mom tried to make up for years of dismissal by smothering me with attention I no longer wanted. She showed up at every treatment, hovering anxiously, repeatedly asking the nurses if they were absolutely sure about everything they did. I brought your favorite soup, she'd say, unpacking containers I was too nauseous to eat. And I've been researching alternative treatments. There's this clinic in Mexico. Mom, I'd interrupt, too tired to be gentle. Please just let the doctors handle it. The guilt in her eyes was almost unbearable, but not as unbearable as the memories of all the times she dismissed my symptoms. Each "you're just tired" and "stop being dramatic" played on repeat in my mind during the long hours of chemotherapy. They dealt with it by throwing money at the problem. He insisted on paying for everything, even though I had good insurance through my job. It's the least I can do, he'd say, not meeting my eyes. The unspoken words hung between us. It was the least he could do after years of sitting silently while his daughter's relationship crumbled under the weight of Victoria's accusations and my supposed attention-seeking. But it was Victoria's reaction that surprised me most. 2 weeks into my treatment, she showed up at my apartment looking like she hadn't slept in days. I found these, she said, dropping a box on my coffee table. Inside were photographs, medical records, diary entries, a paper trail of all the times I've been sick, and she'd accused me of faking it. I kept them, she admitted, her voice breaking. Every time I thought you were lying, I documented it. I was building a case against you to prove to everyone what an attention seeker you were. I stared at the box, too stunned to speak. But looking at them now, she continued, pulling out a hospital discharge paper from her college graduation, it was all real. The panic attack, it wasn't a panic attack at all, was it? These symptoms, chest pain, dizziness, fatigue, they're all early symptoms of lymphoma, I finished quietly. Yes, she covered her face with her hands, her shoulders shaking. I've been horrible to you. All these years, I've been absolutely horrible. I should have felt vindicated. Instead, I just felt tired. Why, Victoria? Why was it so important to prove I was lying? She looked up, her mascara streaked across her cheeks. Because if you were telling the truth, it meant I was the terrible sister who ignored your pain. It was easier to believe you were seeking attention than to face what that made me. The honesty of her answer hit me hard. For the first time in years, my sister wasn't making excuses or deflecting blame. I postponed the wedding because I couldn't bear to celebrate while you're going through this, she admitted. But also because I don't deserve to celebrate. Not after how I've treated you. I looked at my sister, really looked at her. Beyond the perfect makeup and designer clothes, I saw something I'd never seen before, genuine remorse. I can't change the past, I said finally, and honestly, right now I don't have the energy to help you deal with your guilt. I need to focus on getting better. She nodded, wiping her eyes. I understand, but please let me be here for you now, not to make myself feel better, but because you're my sister and you need support. No more accusations, I asked. No more accusations, she promised. No more dismissing your feelings. No more making everything about me. That evening, after Victoria left, I sat looking through the box she brought. Each piece of paper represented a moment when I needed my sister's support and received her scorn instead. But maybe I thought it also represented a chance for change. The next morning, Victoria showed up for my chemotherapy session. She didn't try to take over like Mom or throw money at the problem like Dad. She just sat with me, holding my hand when the nausea hit, and for once, letting me be the center of attention for all the right reasons. I'll never forgive myself, she whispered as I dozed between treatments. Maybe not, I murmured back, but we can try to build something new. Because sometimes, I've learned, it takes something as devastating as cancer to break down the walls we build around our hearts and force us to face the truth about ourselves and our relationships. Victoria never rescheduled her lavish wedding. Instead, she and Brian had a small ceremony in the hospital garden during my last week of treatment. She said it felt right, celebrating new beginnings in every way. Hi everyone, I'm Victoria Chen, a former elementary school teacher. My story is about how helping out turned into full-time, unpaid childcare for my sister-in-law Jennifer's kids, thanks to my mother-in-law Margaret's relentless insistence on family duty. It all started with a phone call. I was grading papers after school when Jennifer's name lit up my phone. Her voice, sickly sweet, carried that telltale note of a looming favor. "Vicky, I hate to ask, but could you watch the kids for a couple of hours? My spa appointment ran late and Mother's busy with her charity event." I hesitated, glancing at the ungraded assignments. "Jennifer, I have parent-teacher conferences in an hour." "Please, the nanny quit last week, and I haven't had time to find a new one. Just this once." Of course, just this once quickly became twice a week, then 3 times, then every day. Jennifer's excuses piled up: yoga classes, lunch meetings, endless shopping trips. All the while, Margaret's condescending voice replayed in my head. "Family helps family, Victoria. Or didn't your parents teach you that?" 3 months later, I was sitting in my principal's office, struggling to explain why I'd been late to work 4 times in 2 weeks. The traffic. Mrs. Rodriguez gave me a sharp but kind look. "Victoria, you're one of our best teachers, but the tardies, the missed meetings. What's going on?" I couldn't tell her the truth, that I had spent my mornings cooking breakfast for Jennifer's kids, driving them to school, and covering for her emergencies. That evening, I vented to my husband, Mark. "The school's starting to notice. I can't keep bailing Jennifer out." Mark ran his hands through his hair, his usual sign of stress. "I know it's a lot, but Mom's right. Family helps family. Jennifer's having a hard time with Tom traveling so much for work." "A hard time?" I snapped. "She spent $5,000 on a handbag last week while I'm running myself ragged." "She needs to maintain appearances for Tom's business," Mark argued. "And it's not like you're doing this for free. Mom's letting us stay in the guest house, remember?" "Ah yes, the guest house, a gilded cage with strings attached." Margaret had insisted we move in temporarily after our apartment was sold, claiming, "No point wasting money on rent. Family takes care of family." The final straw came at Sunday dinner. Jennifer swept in 2 hours late, arms leaden with designer shopping bags, while I sat exhausted after watching her kids all weekend. "Oh, Victoria," Margaret announced. "Jennifer has a gala next weekend. You'll need to take the children from Friday through Sunday. And don't forget Emma's piano practice. Her recital is coming up." I opened my mouth to object, but Jennifer cut me off with a laugh. "I'd ask the new nanny, but she's part-time, and you're just so much better with them. They adore their Aunt Vicky." "Actually," I said, my voice trembling with frustration, "I can't. I have parent-teacher conferences." The room fell silent. Margaret set her fork down with a sharp clink. "Surely you can reschedule, Victoria. This is family." "My job is important too," I replied, meeting her glare. Jennifer waved dismissively. "It's just teaching. Anyone can do that." Something inside me snapped. "You're right, Jennifer. They're your children. Maybe it's time you started acting like it." The table erupted in gasps, and Margaret's face darkened with rage. "Mark," she barked, "you need to talk to your wife about her priorities." That night, I sat in the guest house surrounded by student papers, anger bubbling under the surface. I opened my laptop and started documenting everything, every late morning, every missed obligation, every unpaid hour. This was the beginning of my stand. I didn't know then how ugly things would get, but one thing was certain: I was done being their doormat. The following week made it painfully clear how Margaret and Jennifer viewed my so-called attitude problem. I came home from school to find Jennifer's kids already in our guest house, their homework scattered across the coffee table. "I dropped them off an hour ago," Jennifer's text read. "Emergency shopping trip for Tom's business dinner. Mother said you'd understand." No request. No warning. Just an expectation. I looked at the kids, Emma, 10, and the twins, Luke and Lily, 7. None of this was their fault, but resentment churned in my chest. "Aunt Vicky," Emma began hesitantly, "Mom said you'd help me practice for my piano recital." Before I could respond, my phone buzzed. It was Mrs. Rodriguez, my principal. My stomach sank. "Victoria, we need to discuss your position for next year," she said, her voice kind but firm. "Your performance has been concerning these past months." That night, sleep eluded me. The thought of losing my career, the one thing I'd worked so hard to build, kept me tossing and turning. Around midnight, Mark came in from work. "The kids were here again?" he asked, glancing at the scattered toys. "Your sister didn't even ask," I replied, sitting up. "Mark, my principal called today. My job's on the line." He sighed heavily, sitting on the edge of the bed. Maybe that's not such a bad thing. Mom mentioned she'd give us an allowance if you focus on family duties. I stared at him, incredulous. An allowance? Like I'm a teenager. It would solve everything, he pressed, avoiding my gaze. You could help Jennifer more, and we'd still have income. I didn't spend 6 years in college to become your sister's unpaid nanny, I said, my voice trembling. Don't you see what they're doing? They're helping us, he shot back. We live in their guest house, Victoria. The least we can do is contribute. The next morning, I called in sick, a first for me. Instead of grading papers, I opened my laptop and began tallying everything. Hours spent babysitting, missed work obligations, out-of-pocket expenses for meals and activities. The numbers were staggering. I also started recording conversations, Jennifer dropping the kids off unannounced, Margaret's subtle digs at my career and background, their assumptions about my time and worth. The breaking point came at another Sunday dinner. Margaret's latest declaration hit like a brick. Jennifer needs to focus on her social obligations, she announced. Victoria, you'll take over full-time care of the children. We'll rent out your guest house to offset the loss of your teaching salary. Rent out? I echoed, my stomach twisting. Where will we live? Oh, there's space in the staff quarters above the garage, she replied breezily. The old housekeeper's apartment is quite adequate. Jennifer beamed. Isn't Mother generous? This way, you'll be closer to the kids, and I can focus on my charity work. Mark's hand gripped my knee under the table, a silent plea to stay quiet. But I was done being silent. And what about my career? I asked, keeping my voice steady despite the storm inside me. Margaret waved dismissively. Teaching was a nice hobby, dear, but it's time to grow up and accept your role in this family. My role? I said, pulling out my phone. Let me clarify my role. I began reading from my spreadsheet. In the past 6 months, I've provided 960 hours of childcare. At standard rates, that's worth $19,200. I've missed 8 parent-teacher conferences, risking my professional standing. I've covered $3,400 in expenses with no reimbursement. The silence was deafening. Jennifer's face turned crimson. Are you billing us? She stammered. No, I replied evenly. I'm setting boundaries. Starting tomorrow, I'm no longer available for childcare. You'll need to hire a full-time nanny when you actually pay. Margaret's voice dropped to a dangerous chill. Mark, control your wife. But I wasn't finished. I pulled out a second document, a letter from a lawyer friend. I've also consulted someone about labor laws and coerced domestic work. Would you like to hear what they had to say? The explosion was immediate. Margaret threatened eviction. Jennifer sobbed about family betrayal. Mark sat frozen, watching the facade of their perfect family shatter. But when I mentioned lawyer, I saw it. The flicker of fear in Margaret and Jennifer's eyes. As I left the mansion that night, Margaret's parting words rang in my ears. You'll regret this, Victoria. But I smiled because for the first time, I had a plan. What I didn't expect was how quickly they'd retaliate or how their desperation would become the very thing that set me free. The retaliation came swiftly. The next morning, I woke to find the guest house's electricity cut off. Technical issues, Margaret claimed with a thin smile. By afternoon, the water was shut off too. Perhaps this will help you reconsider your attitude, she said when I confronted her. Family needs to stick together, Victoria. I was ready. Pulling out my phone, I hit record. Are you admitting to cutting off utilities to force me into unpaid childcare? Her smile wavered. Don't be dramatic, and stop recording. It's rude. It's protection, I replied, just like the copies I have of every text where you and Jennifer demanded I skip work to watch the kids, or the security footage of Jennifer dropping them off without notice. Her face stiffened. Security cameras? In the guest house, I said. For the children's safety, of course. They show a lot of interesting patterns of abandoned childcare. By the next day, the utilities were mysteriously restored, but Margaret and Jennifer weren't done. They spread rumors about my unstable behavior and even called my school, claiming concern over my emotional state around children. Their mistake? They put everything in writing. Texts, emails, voicemails, all a clear, damning trail. The breaking point came at a charity gala. I wasn't invited, of course, but my friend Rebecca, who was catering, recorded Margaret and Jennifer's conversation. Once Victoria's fired, she'll have no choice. Jennifer's voice rang clear. Mother's already arranged it with her friend on the school board. And Mark? Someone asked. Oh, he knows where his inheritance lies, Margaret said with a laugh. He'll divorce her if she doesn't fall in line. We've already discussed it. That night, I played the recording for Mark. His face turned ashen. They're bluffing, he murmured, but the truth was written all over his face. Are they? I asked. When's the last time you stood up to them? After a long pause, he finally asked, What do you want to do? I pulled out a folder. Option 1. I go public with this evidence. Labor law violations, coercion, defamation. It'll destroy their precious reputation. Imagine how their charity boards will react. And option 2, he asked hesitantly. We use this as leverage for a clean break. A fair property settlement from your trust fund, enough for our own house. I keep my job. And they never contact me about childcare again. The confrontation happened in Margaret's study. I presented the evidence calmly while Jennifer turned scarlet and Margaret's face drained of color. You wouldn't dare, Jennifer spat. You'll never work in this town again. Actually, I said with a smile, I've already accepted a position as head of elementary education at Riverside Academy. They're thrilled about my dedication to children's welfare. Margaret's hands trembled as she reached for her phone. I'll call our lawyer. An excellent idea, I replied. I'm sure the labor board would be very interested in your attempts to coerce domestic servitude. Within a week, the settlement was signed. Mark and I moved into a lovely house across town. He started therapy to confront years of manipulation. Jennifer finally hired a professional nanny with benefits. Margaret, desperate to restore her reputation, joined 3 more charity boards. I see her occasionally at school events, where I'm now principal. She pretends not to see me. I don't mind. The other day, Emma, now in high school, stopped by my office. I miss you, Aunt Vicky, she said softly. But I'm glad you stood up to them. You taught me something important. What's that? I asked. That family duty doesn't mean letting people abuse your kindness. I smiled, thinking of how far I'd come from that overwhelmed teacher in the guest house. Sometimes the strongest family bonds are the ones you choose to break. Looking back, I realized standing up to Margaret and Jennifer wasn't just about ending their exploitation. It was about teaching their children, and myself, that real family lifts you up, not tears you down. What would you have done in my situation? Gone public or taken the settlement? Hi, I'm Natalie Cooper, and 8 months pregnant, I stood frozen in disbelief as my sister-in-law, Emily, loaded my baby shower gifts into her car. They were meant for me anyway, she said, clutching the custom-made blanket embroidered with my unborn son's name. Right, Mom? My mother-in-law, Susan, nodded without hesitation. Emily's been trying for years. She deserves this more than you do. I instinctively cradled my belly, trying to process the scene. The beautiful nursery I'd spent months preparing, sage green walls, hand-painted clouds, the heirloom rocking chair, was being stripped bare. All this while my husband, David, was conveniently out of town on a business trip. You can't do this, I managed, my voice trembling. These gifts were given to me for my baby. Look, I grabbed a card from one of the unopened presents, holding it up as proof. It has my name on it, to Natalie and baby Cooper. Emily barely glanced at it, her lips curling in a smirk. Oh please, everyone knows I've been trying to have a baby for years. They probably wrote your name out of pity. I mean, how long have you even been married to David? 18 months, Susan cut in, her tongue sharp. And let's not forget how rushed that wedding was. Emily and Jason have been married 6 years. They've earned this. I felt my baby kick, as if sharing my outrage. Yesterday, this nursery had been perfect, a haven of love and anticipation. Now, it was a battlefield. The rocking chair stays, I said firmly, my voice steadying. It's from my grandmother. It has nothing to do with you. Emily paused, her hand already on the chair. Mom, tell her, it's perfect for my nursery. Your nursery? I snapped. You're not even pregnant. The room fell silent. Susan's face hardened as she stepped forward. How dare you? Do you know how cruel that sounds? Emily has been through so much, while you, she gestured dismissively at my belly. You probably trapped David with this pregnancy. My cheeks burned with anger and humiliation. This pregnancy wasn't a trap. It was a joy David and I had planned together. But Susan had never believed that. To her, I was the outsider, the interloper who had stolen her son. I'm calling David, I said, pulling out my phone. Susan and Emily exchanged a glance, and for the first time, doubt flickered in their eyes. David will understand, Susan said quickly, recovering her composure. He knows how much Emily wants a baby, and honestly, natally, you can afford to replace these things. You work, don't you? Emily doesn't have that luxury. I hit David's contact, putting the call on speaker. It rang once. Twice. The number you are trying to reach is currently unavailable. Of course, he was on a flight to Chicago. They had timed this perfectly. Emily resumed her looting, humming softly as she piled more gifts into her car. The diaper bag from David's aunt. The hand-knitted onesies from my best friend. The baby monitor system my coworkers had pulled together to buy. Stop, I cried, my voice cracking. Please stop. These aren't yours. Susan sighed like I was a child throwing a tantrum. Natally, you need to understand what family means. Family is sacrifice. Emily is David's sister, his real family. And when she finally has a baby, that child will be David's real niece or nephew. Your baby, she paused, her gaze icy. Well, we'll see. Her words hit me like a punch to the stomach. Even now, 8 months pregnant with their grandchild, they didn't see me or my baby as family. I sank into the rocking chair, too overwhelmed to stand. Through blurred vision, I watched as they ransacked my nursery, taking not just gifts, but the love and hope they represented. To them, I wasn't family, and to them, my baby, their grandchild, wasn't either. As Emily and Susan carried the last box out, leaving the nursery eerily barren, something inside me snapped. Maybe it was pregnancy hormones, or maybe it was the months of their subtle manipulation finally boiling over. I pulled out my phone and opened the camera. What are you doing? Emily froze halfway down the driveway, clutching the custom baby blanket. Documenting theft, I said, my voice steady despite the storm raging inside me. Every single gift, every card with my name on it, every receipt, they're all recorded. Susan stormed back up the path, her face flushed with anger. Put that phone away this instant. How dare you accuse us of theft? We're family. Family doesn't steal from family, I replied, focusing the camera on her. And family definitely doesn't steal from an unborn baby. Emily's lower lip trembled, her go-to tactic when cornered. Mom, she's being so mean. After everything we've done for her. I let out a sharp, bitter laugh. Everything you've done? Like what? Criticizing my wedding? Undermining my pregnancy? Or maybe you mean guilt-tripping me every step of the way. Enough? Susan barked. David will hear about this disrespectful behavior. Augie will, I said, locking eyes with her. Every word, every detail, every video. Their expressions faltered for a split second before they turned and loaded the last box into Emily's car. I stood in the driveway, watching as they drove off with my baby's gifts. But I wasn't defeated. Not yet. I immediately called Lauren, my best friend and co-host of the baby shower. They did wait AT. Lauren's outrage crackled through the speaker. I'm on my way, and I'm bringing backup. Within an hour, my living room was packed with allies. Lauren, my sister Kate, and 3 colleagues who had attended the shower. Together, we went to work. We cataloged the gift list, photos from the shower, cards, and receipts. Kate, a junior lawyer, was meticulous. This isn't just petty behavior, Kate declared, her voice steely. This is premeditated theft. They waited until David was unreachable, classic intent. As we worked, my phone buzzed with a text from Emily. Thanks for understanding about the gifts. Baby stuff is so expensive these days. Lauren snatched my phone to read the message and let out an incredulous laugh. She's thanking you for letting her rob you? Oh, save that text. It's a written confession. A second buzz followed, this time from Susan. I expect you to apologize to Emily for your attitude today. She's very upset. David would be ashamed of how you've acted. Kate rolled her eyes, taking screenshots. Textbook gaslighting. They're trying to flip the narrative and paint you as the villain. My friend stayed late, helping me calm down and prepare for the next steps. Around 8 p.m., my phone lit up with David's name. Honey? His voice was confused, laced with concern. Mom just called. She said you had a meltdown and attacked Emily? I took a deep breath, steadying myself. David, listen carefully. I'm going to tell you exactly what happened, and I have witnesses and evidence to back it all up. As I recounted the events, his initial confusion shifted to stunned silence. When I finished, he was quiet so long I thought the call had dropped. "Send me everything," he finally said, his voice tight with anger. "Videos, photos, texts, everything. I'm catching the next flight home." "But your business meeting can wait. This is more important." He paused, exhaling sharply. "I'm so sorry, Nat. I should have seen this coming. The way they've been acting since we announced the pregnancy." After we hung up, Lauren squeezed my hand. "You know this isn't about the gifts, right? It's about control. They're testing how much you'll tolerate." She was right. This wasn't just about a few baby shower presents. This was about boundaries, ones they had been pushing since day one. I glanced at my sister. "Kate, how would you like to handle this legally?" Kate's grin was sharp. "I thought you'd never ask. First thing tomorrow, we're filing a police report. Then, we're getting a restraining order." "Isn't that a little extreme?" I asked, rubbing my belly as my baby gave an emphatic kick. "Extreme?" Lauren cut in. "They robbed your unborn child in front of you, after planning it so your husband couldn't intervene. A restraining order is just step one." As if on cue, another text from Susan arrived. "Emily's been crying for hours. I hope you're happy with yourself. Don't bother coming to Sunday dinner until you've learned to be a proper Cooper family member." I handed the phone to Kate, who added it to her growing file of evidence. "I will be skipping Sunday dinner, all right," she said grimly. "We'll be busy filing charges." That night, as I sat in the empty nursery, I felt a strange calm settle over me. They thought they were punishing me, teaching me my place in their twisted hierarchy. But instead, they'd given me the final push to stand up for myself and for my baby. David arrived home at dawn, his face a mixture of exhaustion, anger, and guilt. He didn't even pause to set down his bags before heading straight to the nursery. The sight of it, stripped bare, seemed to harden his resolve. Without a word, he pulled out his phone and called his mother. "Return everything. Now," he said, his voice sharper and colder than I'd ever heard. "I mean it, Mom. Every single gift. Back in this house by noon, or I'm going to the police." Susan's response crackled through the speaker. "David, sweetheart, you don't understand. Emily needs help." David cut her off. "And you need to stop enabling her behavior. Those gifts were for my child, your grandchild. Or have you conveniently forgotten that?" By 8 a.m., Susan and Emily arrived with several boxes. David met them in the driveway while I watched from the living room window, Kate standing beside me, notepad in hand. The boxes were hastily packed, some half opened, and the custom baby blanket was conspicuously missing. David's expression darkened as he surveyed the scene. "Where's the rest?" he asked, his voice low but firm. "This is everything," Emily insisted, though her eyes darted nervously to the ground. "Really?" David held up his phone. "Because Lauren sent me the full gift list, complete with photos. Should we go through it item by item?" Susan stepped forward, her voice full of forced calm. "David, let's not blow this out of proportion. We're family. Surely we can work this out." "We are working this out," David replied, his tone cutting through her deflection. "Right now, we're discussing how you and Emily robbed my pregnant wife while I was away. We're discussing how you've treated Natalie like an outsider since the day we got married. And we're discussing how all of it stops today." Emily burst into tears, her trademark response when things didn't go her way. "It's not fair," she sobbed. "I've been trying for so long, and she doesn't deserve." "Enough." David's voice boomed, silencing everyone. "Emily, your struggles don't give you the right to steal. And Mom, your favoritism doesn't give you the right to bully my wife. Now, where is the blanket?" The truth came out an hour later when Emily's husband, Jason, arrived at our doorstep with the missing blanket in hand. He looked embarrassed and apologetic as he handed it over. "I didn't know," he admitted, avoiding eye contact. "Emily told me you gave her the gifts because you didn't need them. I'm so sorry. She's been lying about a lot of things, hasn't she?" It was the first crack in the facade, but it wouldn't be the last. Over the next few days, Kate helped us file a police report, though we ultimately decided not to press charges on one condition. David demanded that Susan and Emily attend family counseling if they wanted any future relationship with us or our child. "But we don't need counseling," Susan protested during a tense family meeting. "We were just trying to help Emily." "Help her by stealing from a pregnant woman?" David snapped. By planning it when I wasn't here to stop you. By trying to manipulate Natalie into thinking she was the problem. That's not help, it's abuse. The real breakthrough came a week later during the first counseling session. Emily admitted what we had suspected all along. She and Jason had never been trying for a baby. I just couldn't stand it, she sobbed. Natalie gets everything so easily, the perfect wedding, the perfect pregnancy. Mom always said I was supposed to have those things first. Susan sat in stunned silence as her carefully crafted narrative crumbled. The therapist didn't let her off the hook, gently but firmly guiding her to see how her favoritism had fueled Emily's insecurities and damaged her relationships with David and her unborn grandchild. 3 months later, I gave birth to a healthy baby boy. The nursery was fully restored, but with one new addition: security cameras. Susan and Emily were allowed to visit, but only after completing their counseling sessions and offering genuine apologies. Emily's first visit was tentative. She sat on the edge of the couch, watching the baby sleep in his crib. "I understand if you can't forgive me," she said quietly. "What I did was unforgivable." "It was," I agreed, my voice steady. "But this little guy deserves to know his aunt. The real you, not the person your mother wanted you to be." Susan's transformation took longer. But when she finally saw her grandson, something seemed to shift. She stood over his crib, tears rolling down her cheeks. "He has David's eyes," she whispered. "I almost missed this because of my own stubbornness. Today, things aren't perfect, but they're better." Emily continues her counseling, slowly unraveling the jealousy and resentment that had consumed her. Susan is learning how to be a grandmother instead of a puppet master. And David? He's more protective than ever, ensuring our little family is shielded from toxicity. As for me, I've learned that the greatest act of love isn't always forgiveness. It's setting firm boundaries and demanding respect. My son will grow up knowing that while family is important, self-respect is essential. Looking back, I realized the empty nursery was a turning point. What once represented their cruelty now stands as a symbol of strength, filled with love, protected by boundaries, and surrounded by people who understand that true family lifts you up instead of tearing you down. I'm Rachel, 29, staring at the bank statement that shows my inheritance account drained to zero. Across from me, Linda, my mother-in-law, pushes my late father's company badge toward my sister-in-law with a smug smile. "The company needs a proper leader," she says, her words cutting like glass. But Linda doesn't know about the secret account my father left me. I should have seen this coming. The signs were there from the moment I married Michael 5 years ago. Linda had always treated our family company, the $50 million tech empire my dad built from scratch, like it was her personal fiefdom. "Rachel, darling," Linda's voice drips with condescension. "Your father was a visionary, but his judgment wasn't what it used to be. Putting you in charge of the company's finances, you can't even manage your own budget." I dig my nails into the armrest, willing myself to stay calm. Across the sleek mahogany table, Jessica, my sister-in-law, sits preening in a tailored power suit that screams CEO. The same Jessica who ran her boutique into bankruptcy just last year. The board agrees. Linda continues, sliding a legal document across the table. "Your father's succession plan was flawed. Thankfully, we've corrected it." My mind races. This started the moment Dad's casket hit the ground. The closed-door board meeting I wasn't invited to. The routine audit that locked me out of the system. And now this. "This is illegal," I say, forcing steel into my voice. "Dad left me controlling interest in the company. I have the paperwork." "Had the paperwork," Jessica interrupts, her smirk razor sharp. "Funny how things disappeared during office renovations, isn't it?" The renovations. Last weekend, while I was at Dad's lake house sorting through his belongings, Linda insisted on modernizing the executive floor. A convenient excuse to box up my office after the flood from a conveniently broken water cooler. "Don't be dramatic," Linda says, patting my hand like I'm a child. "We're family. We never leave you out in the cold. You'll keep your job in accounts payable. It's where you belong." My phone buzzes in my pocket. A text from Marcus, Dad's old lawyer. "Don't sign anything. Check your email immediately." "I need time to review these," I say, rising from the chair. "The board meets in an hour," Linda snaps, her mask of civility slipping. "This will be resolved today." As I head for the door, Jessica's voice cuts through the air. Oh, Rachel, we'll need the keys to Dad's estate. As CEO, I'll be moving in. I pause, my grip tightening around a doorframe. Dad's voice echoes in my mind. Remember the chess player who always won. Sometimes you lose a few pieces to win the game. What Linda and Jessica don't know is that Dad didn't just teach me accounting, he taught me how to think 3 moves ahead. I step into the elevator, my fingers curling around the small silver key Dad slipped me just before he died. The safety deposit box, he had whispered. First National Bank, box 2317. When the time comes, you'll know what to do. The time has come. The safety deposit box at First National Bank feels heavier than it should in my hands. My fingers tremble slightly as I insert Dad's key, his voice echoing in my mind. In business, Rachel, always have a backup plan for your backup plan. Inside, I find a sealed envelope, a USB drive, and a small leather notebook. But what freezes me in place is a handwritten letter, dated 3 days before Dad passed. ***, my dearest Rachel. If you're reading this, Linda has made her move. She never forgave me for naming you my successor instead of Jessica. The $2 million she stole, that was bait. The real inheritance is in the Cayman Islands account, details in the encrypted files on this drive. But more importantly, check the security footage from my home office for the past month. Linda and Jessica have been having some interesting midnight meetings. Love, Dad, ***. My phone buzzes again, another text from Marcus. Linda called an emergency board meeting for 3 p.m. Also, your husband's been asking questions about the company's offshore accounts. Michael, my stomach twists. How deep does this betrayal run? I plug the USB drive into my laptop, my fingers moving automatically to type the password I've known since childhood, the name of Dad's first company. Files flood the screen. Bank statements, recordings, emails, and a folder labeled insurance. Oh my God, I whisper, scrolling through document after damning document. Linda and Jessica hadn't just stolen my inheritance. They'd been embezzling company funds for years. And Dad, brilliant as ever, had been collecting evidence the whole time. A security camera alert pings on my phone. Movement detected in Dad's home office. Pulling up the live feed, I watch as Jessica rifles through the desk drawers while Linda keeps watch by the door. It has to be here somewhere, Jessica hisses, her movements frantic. The old man must have kept records of the Cayman accounts. Linda's voice is sharp. Keep looking. Once we find those accounts, we can transfer everything before the little princess figures it out. Michael says she hasn't checked her father's safety deposit box yet. My husband. My throat tightens. He's been in on this too. I start recording the live feed, my hands steady now. On the screen, Jessica pulls open a drawer with a triumphant grin. There, she says, holding up a folder. Proof Rachel's been stealing from the company. Once I forge her signature on these documents, it'll look airtight. I've seen enough. I dial Marcus, barely waiting for him to answer. Rachel, he says quickly, please tell me you've got something. Oh, I have everything. I reply, my eyes locked on the feed as Linda and Jessica walk out of Dad's office with the stolen documents. Dad knew this was coming. He left a trail of breadcrumbs, and they just walked straight into his trap. The board meeting's in 2 hours, Marcus reminds me. Perfect, I say, downloading the final files. That's all the time I need. Call Agent Sanders at the FBI. Dad apparently had several chats with her about potential corporate fraud. And Marcus, make sure every board member is there. They won't want to miss this. As I gather the evidence, Dad's voice comes to me again, his favorite piece of advice. The best revenge isn't served cold, sweetheart. It's served with irrefutable proof and federal witnesses. Linda and Jessica wanted to play chess. Fine, but they forgot one crucial detail. I was trained by the Grandmaster. The conference room hums with quiet tension as the board members settle in. At the head of the table, Linda sits with a calculated air of authority, Jessica smugly seated to her right. Michael stands awkwardly near the door, avoiding my eyes. His guilt is written all over his face, and for a brief moment I almost laugh. Almost. Linda rises, her voice ringing out. Before we begin, I'd like to thank you all for attending this emergency meeting. We are here to discuss Rachel's questionable fitness to lead this company. Actually, I cut in, stepping into the room with Marcus and 2 FBI agents flanking me. We're here to address corporate fraud, embezzlement, and conspiracy. The color drains from Linda's face. Jessica's smirk falters, freezing in place. What is this nonsense? Linda demands, though her voice wavers. I set my laptop down, connecting it to the projector with deliberate calm. Let's start with something straightforward, last night's security footage. You'll find it enlightening, especially the part where you discuss forging my signature. The room goes silent as the video begins to play. Linda's and Jessica's voices echo through the room, crystal clear, outlining their scheme to frame me, their theft of company funds, and their partnership with Michael. This is doctored. Jessica sputters, her confidence crumbling. Like you doctored these? I ask, sliding the stolen folder across the table. You might recognize these documents from my father's office, the ones you plan to use to frame me. By the way, Dad installed cameras everywhere after catching you trying to hack his computer last year. Linda stands abruptly, her face flushed with anger. This is preposterous. I am the acting CEO. Actually, Marcus interjects smoothly, you're not. The board vote last week is invalid because you failed to notify all shareholders, specifically the majority shareholder. I pull another document from my briefcase, my voice steady. You see, Linda, that $2 million you stole. Dad knew you'd try something like this. It was bait. Meanwhile, he quietly transferred controlling interest to an offshore holding company, one that I've owned since my 25th birthday. The FBI agent steps forward, her voice firm. Miss Walker, we have a warrant to seize all company computers and financial records. We also have evidence of wire fraud across state lines. Linda stares at me, her power slipping through her fingers. Michael, she whispers desperately, tell them. But Michael doesn't move. He just stands there, caught in a spotlight of his own betrayal. Rachel, I can explain, he starts, his voice thin. Save it for your lawyer. I cut him off coldly. Oh, and Michael, consider this notice. I'll be filing for divorce. The next hour is a blur. FBI agents swarm the building, confiscating files and computers. Handcuffs click as Linda and Jessica are escorted out, their protests growing weaker with every step. Jessica's expensive suit looks far less impressive as she's led away, and Linda's once commanding presence dissolves into frantic pleas. Later, I sit in Dad's old office, my office now. The leather notebook he left me lies open on the desk. On the final page, his handwriting is firm and deliberate. Remember, sweetheart, success isn't just about making money. It's about seeing the whole board and having the courage to make the hard moves when it counts. I look out over the city skyline, thinking of everything Dad taught me. Linda and Jessica thought they were playing chess, but they never understood the most important rule. Before you go after the king, make sure you've accounted for all the pieces. The company is safe now. Dad made sure of that. And as for the $2 million they stole, consider it the cost of unmasking their schemes. Sometimes, losing a battle wins you the war. My phone buzzes, a text from Marcus. Board approve your reorganization plan. Everyone's behind you now. I smile to myself, the weight of the past weeks finally beginning to lift. Dad's final lesson echoes in my mind. The best leaders don't just survive attempts to destroy them. They use those attempts to become stronger. Looking out at the city below, I murmur, checkmate, Linda. This one's for you, Dad.